Hello, doing a follow-up real quick because figured if you've been gone this long, if you're going to do a follow-up at all, do it fast. You know, like the idea that Modest Mouse had with being gone for almost a decade and just hit him with 2 albums, so it's like they had 2 in between. We haven't seen that second album they promised yet, but I'm sure they're still thinking about it. We won't wait another 10 years, right? Anyway, I wanted to start, because we're not reviewing Modest Mouse, with a quite little fun thing from the past of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. This is the Getaway. Here is a report I read from the budget from their '86 debut. In 1986, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were given $5,000 by EMI Records to make a demo tape. They set aside $2,000 of that for heroin and cocaine. That's one hefty budget. 2/5 of the budget was spent on heroin and cocaine. That's not quite Dave Mustaine levels of drugs, but it's getting there. And now we have the Red Hot Chili Peppers today. Not much has changed except for the level of budget they have. And the porn stash, but we'll get to that later. This is the Red Hot Chili Peppers' second album now, with lead guitarist Josh Klinghoffer, after the departure, or should I say the second departure of guitar virtuoso John Frusciante. But before that, we're going to try and get in a little bit of this, because there's just so much of it. So here's some history on the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They formed in 1983 in Los Angeles. If you didn't know, they're from California. Just watch the video if you haven't seen it. The group's musical style is mostly rock, but it's funk. It's rock, funk, jams, elements of jazz, everything. Its currently leading band is Anthony Kiedis on vocals and Flea on bass, as they have been since the beginning, as well as Chad Smith on drums and Josh Klinghoffer on guitar. When they started, the original lineup was Hillel Slovak on guitar, drummer Jack Irons, and Kiedis and Flea, who've been there from the beginning. They put out their original debut 1984 album, self-titled. And Cliff Martinez was the drummer on the first 2 records, who Irons played on the third, and guitarist Jack Sherman played on the first. There was a lot of jumping around for a while. From there, they went on to make a couple of albums into Freaky Styley in '85 and the Uplift Mofo Party Plan in '87. But Jack Sherman actually died of a heroin overdose in 1988 as a result of his friend's death. Irons decided to leave the group and was replaced by guitarist Dwayne McKnight of Parliament, and brought in to replace Slovak was D.H. Pellegro of the Dead Kennedys, although they were both quickly replaced. Chad Smith joined on drums. Soon after that, Frusciante came in, and we got the lineup we've been used to for the longest. Then they made Mother's Milk in '89, and the just absolute huge smash success, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, in 1991 with Rick Rubin. And that was the one that just absolutely blew up the band. But Frusciante grew uncomfortable with the success of the band, left in 1992 in the middle of the Blood Sugar Sex Magic tour. After a few guitarists, Dave Navarro of Jane's Addiction joined the Chili Peppers for One Hot Minute, which is actually my favorite album. Don't ask why, it just is. From that, Navarro was fired from the band, and Frusciante, fresh out of drug rehab, rejoined the same year at Flea's request. From there, they went on to make a bunch of albums together. Californication, By the Way, and Stadium Arcadium. From there, we kind of know. He left the band after Stadium Arcadium. We get I'm With You, the first with Josh, who was the backup guitarist, and then this one. So that's a quick history on the Red Hot Chili Peppers, minus all the fun stuff in between. There's a lot of stuff, seriously. You should check it out if you're interested. This is, again, Josh was originally the biggest criticism on the first album with I'm With You, the first new album, because he was filled in as the backup guitarist before, and he just still seems like the backup guitarist. There was no fun guitar to be found on the album, and I think he's got some time to get used to his role now. So let's see if there's more fun, catchy solos here, and see, it's also the first album since Flea broke his arm and had to relearn the bass. I'm not making that up. Sadly, not the first album with the porn stash from Kiedis. Told you it'd come back. My first hint that we were in for a different Chili Peppers, though, should have been when the album producer was Danger Mouse and Nigel Godrich of Radiohead was mixing the album. Different, I know. The Getaway starts in a much more subtle way than any Chili Peppers album ever. I'm glad to see that Josh is no longer trying to imitate Frusciante, because it didn't work. It's a lot more modern and sleek guitar with a way more wavy sound to them, and Flea contains himself a little, only casually bringing the funk, kind of down low, subtle funk. He keeps the song into this pretty good groove, but the work from Danger Mouse is immediately noticed, as well as Nigel, as it's the least funky opening ever, but this modern groove thing, it works pretty well for them, and I think it's an album highlight. Dark Necessities is the lead single, and again starts casually with piano and bass, but it brings the funk and a pretty great bass line from Flea. However, the other main driving instrument is the piano, and again, Anthony does what he does best and brings this fun groove sing-along. And the song really does go full funk and full radio rock for a bit. It grooves just so well. But the piano bridge is especially surprisingly well worked. It's kind of an R&B groove. It's another album highlight. Its song ends with a great guitar solo that's also unique and doesn't sound like he's trying to imitate anymore, which is great. We Turn Red is one of my favorites on the album again. It trades off a very slow R&B groove to a catchy chorus with more funky and bouncy verses. Those trade off a lot on this album in general. And the deal with transitions is just, they worked them so well. It's so subtle, but they were able to finally come with this great groove to just bouncing funk. The next one is called The Longest Wave, and it was a more straightforward modern groove R&B. It leads in with a great guitar solo, but the aspect of the song is just how great the chorus sounds. It's such a new direction for them, but it's great. It's one of the more mellow R&B standards I've heard from them. Goodbye Angels is the closest they've come to sounding like the old school Peppers, but it builds to a groove and passes that into rock territory. The guitar line here is one of the best on the album, and it's great to see a much different than usual Chili Peppers line. I really think Josh comes off hugely on his own here, and it's great, this big wavy guitar line with a huge ending solo. The jam of this is just awesome. The bass jams the guitar shreds, Chad drams away on the drums like he's absolutely loving it, and Anthony does what he does. It sounds great. Sick Love is actually co-written for the Chili Peppers by none other than Elton John. It's a full-on reggae groove ballad, and I love it. I know some people have been really annoyed with it because it sounds so different from what you want from them, but it's cool. I like it. It's an inspired piano ballad, an R&B ballad, and it's an absolute highlight. The next one is called Go Robot. Again, it's a more straight-up funk song, probably the most one on the album. It adds some synths in the background, but as a casual groove. But the weird lyrics come out a bit here, as Anthony Cletus talks about having sex with a robot. Only Anthony Cletus can sound normal talking about having sex with a robot. Honestly, man, stop reading R. Kelly's memoirs. Not everything needs to be sexy. The end of the song comes out of nowhere with this weird, futuristic synthwave. I think the robot sex has ended at this point because we get a disco vibe. Feast on the Flowers. Starting a more reggae groove here, it escalates into a more kind of rock reggae mix. Instead of leading with the guitar, the piano and the bass find the leading of the charge for a while. On Detroit, they jump back into the more straightforward rock sound, once again seeing Anthony a bit of rap rocking as he does on the pace. It seems to be fighting the general direction of the album style that Danger Mouse has given them, but sometimes that happens. It kind of mixes with the mix of the album. This track could have been filler on any album of theirs from the past 20 years, in my opinion. This Mitochondria is the loudest start to anything on the album with a guitar explosion, and it's not funky at all. This might have been the most straightforward rock song ever written for them. It slows down into an ending of an R&B verse. From there you get Encore, which by sharp contrast is the most mellow opening to anything they've ever done. They had a ballad before, like the Elton John one. This is a reggae song previously written for them, but it's not as good as the Elton John one, and it kind of just floats along, kind of Radiohead style. I see you there, Nigel Godrich, doing some of the Radiohead mixing. On The Hunter, honestly, I wouldn't know if this was a Chili Peppers song if I didn't have previously read it was. Because if you replace Anthony on vocals, you get a different band. Like if James Mercer were to sing this song, it would be a Shin song. They have a trumpet and ethereal floating ballad. It's about as un-Chili Peppers as you can get. And that leads to the closing change. Dreams of a Samurai. Now when you read that as a Chili Peppers song, you know what to expect. A funny, cheesy, funk over-the-top song about samurai, rhyming words with samurai, pretty much. But the song actually starts with a slow piano build-in before an almost free-form jazz section. I'm not making this up. It's a very odd one for the Chili Peppers. It's almost like they were channeling Floyd when they wrote it, but the lyrics from Anthony are actually inspired, and Chad Smith gets to let loose on some jazz drumming. It's so different and great that I just love it. It's an album highlight. I know a lot of people are mad, because this is the most unfunky album from the Chili Peppers ever. And I know you buy a ticket to the Chili Peppers or buy an album for the Chili Peppers, you expect funk. It's like buying, a Halo game, and they're not being things to shoot at. But at the same time, though, they do what they did with Chris Conte on I'm With You, and it did not work. It just didn't. This is a new band, and they've accepted that, and you should too, because they made good music here. They were able to take Josh and make him really stand out on his own in a way that I think they did not before. Adding in Danger Mouse and Nigel Godrich to help them with this was pure genius. They weren't able to create this huge comeback turnaround album they were wanting to, but there's a few missteps. They do fight the direction of the album, and there's a few filler songs like Detroit, Feasting in the Flowers, Go Robot, and Encore that could have helped without that. But even with a few wrinkles, it's leaps and bounds better than I'm With You, in my opinion. It sounds fresher than anything they've done in a long time, since maybe even the last new-sounding era, which was Californication by the Way era. It's not as good as those, but it sounds so unique and different, and Josh has really come into his own. I think the future looks great for these guys with this new style. Honestly, I do. I can't wait to see it. I would recommend The Getaway, Dark Necessities, Sick Love, and Dreams of a Samurai. 3.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, check it out. I think you might be